Hi, thank you so much, Encarnacion. Thank you for the presentation, for the introductions. It's really exciting for us. Uh, I'm going to also be presenting alongside John from Chuquimarca and Natalia, whose video might pop up in a second too, from Peoria or from Peoria. The presentation today is going to address a couple of questions, primarily how to engage and better serve Latinx communities. And we tried to be as expansive about that as possible from a Chicago perspective, but also to decenter the urban and also include this wonderful speaker, Natalia from Peoria. So, and she'll talk about her space. My program role as curator and sort of initiator for Cinta Previa, a digital platform now that was transformed from a screening service, a screening event series, I should say, of Latinx experimental video artists, expanded to then include Chuquimarca, and is now just living in the virtual world, obviously, because of the pandemic. So without further ado, I'm gonna share my screen and get into the presentation. 1 second. Here we go. Oh, wait 1 second, I have to do the audio, sorry. I always forget to do the audio. I do want to share a clip of one of the videos, like to give an example of the kind of work that we've screened before. Hopefully you can all now see my screen, and here are all our names: Natalia Linares, John H. Guevara, and myself. So just as a quick kind of landscape of the city and understanding, I work also as a professor at one of the community colleges in the city. And if you see in this very, very recent, literally today, note that was sent out, speaking to diversity and anti-Blackness and trying to address anti-racism across the system of the colleges, you'll note at the bottom very telling information about the colleges. And I'm assuming a lot of the arts organizations, the museums, and things that we all are familiar with. 49% of the college is Latinx students, but only 15% are Latinx faculty and staff teaching those. 15% teaching 49% of the students. And it gets a little worse, goes down to 14% in terms of board of trustee members. So that kind of landscape is where we're coming at, and trying to solve in our own kind of nomadic and creative ways. I am, again, from Cinta Previa and Chuquimarca, and I collaborated on a grant proposal with the Propeller Fund to just continue our programming, which we were already separately doing in different capacities. I'll let John explain Chuquimarca further, but I have this website, Cinta Previa, that I'll share the hashtag and website information for at the end of the slide, where now I'm showing video artwork of the open call that we created together. This is just a snippet of our grant proposal for those of you that might be not as big as a park district or a ballet, which we saw some folks from those institutions are here who might be doing these on a more grassroots level. The Propeller Fund, I think, is Chicago specific, but I'm sure there's lots of other grants, Illinois Humanities, Arts Council's other grants that you can apply for. They might be in the thousands range, $5,000 to $6,000, maybe more if you're in a small nonprofit, of course, hopefully. And just for the ones who are small fries like us, the biggest things to note are just like going a little bit over your budget to show that you really need the grant, filling in with all of the supporters and people that you already have that you're going to pay and work with, mapping out as roughly as you can your project, and then noting, of course, all the in-kind resources that you already have at your disposal, like you're building your own, in the case of Chuquimarca, store, apartment gallery, or my storefront gallery, which I'm already paying rent on. So we count that as in-kind contributions to the proposal, and try to focus the grant monies just on the programming and paying the artists that we're redistributing funds for the Propeller Fund's requirements. Again, you see the website, and just this is an example of our most recent program, which we led from the open call, which was able to highlight 3 different artists, all MIT students, grad students, and they were really excited. I'm just gonna show a little snippet of one of the videos from that screening The videos were made available online. They're still available online. Again, this is experimental video art, and we'll show a little bit from the talk too. So that was work by Luisa, one of Brazilian artists who submitted a proposal with 2 other MIT students to our program. And that work is kind of exploring the mining of resources and minerals and the export and sort of transportation of these things in these colonial systems across Brazil, and the sort of legacies of colonialism that we're dealing with today. As you can see, we were really excited that past Saturday to have about 25 registrations for this very niche, avant-garde, very specific, nerdy conversation with these artists, and about 17 or a little bit more in and out of the talk. You know, it's pretty fun and intimate, I would say, is the nature of our programming as a collaboration. And in general, my own programming runs that way too. Before that, I was able to highlight just over the summer a Black Mexican, Blaxican, self-identified artist to address, again, issues of anti-Blackness in our own community, and really kind of get deep with her documentary work. Ebony Bailey I was excited to have her featured, or to have the support of Vocalo Radio promoting her work and our screening. Really exciting for her. You know, she's texted me. Of course, we're friends over the past couple of years because I programmed her also in Mexico before. To find out that she got a Google opportunity to speak, and you know, now she's getting that Google money, and that's exactly the kind of thing that we kind of put as or I believe in, making sure that artists are getting paid and that we're promoting the work that's being done and letting people speak for themselves. I'm not the expert in anti-Blackness, but I can speak to anti-racism as a Latinx person. So I just want to give people platform and space. Just a screenshot here for the Zoom talk, and we had 30 people attending that. Again, is for small, not-profit, meaning we're not profits. We don't have institutional money or support. We're pretty excited to get these kind of numbers. And again, working with collaborators like Film Front, another micro cinema in Chicago that maximum seats like 30 people anyways in its space. I was able to bring up and support the art of a queer Latinx experimental video artist, Jorge Bordelo. We're really excited then, this was about a year ago now, to have a little note in the reader. Really exciting for again, this very small effort, only 2 years old since Cinta Previa. Just some of the promotional material, and credits for that in-house designer doing the work for the graphic design and posters and promotion. Our flyers really online. Kaisa Sali, thank you very much. This is their handiwork again here. Just all of the collaborations that I've had with Film Front. And I think probably that's one of the through lines you'll see here, collaborating with Chuquimarca. Film Front as another organization that's already doing work, already has audience, already has people. These are images from the very earliest screenings that I had 2 years ago, two summers ago, at Comfort Station, being awarded a small $300 micro grant to kind of kickstart the series, and bringing in just all of our friends. That's Silvia Malagrino, Argentinian filmmaker and photographer, who was my mentor and my advisor at UIC, where I did my MFA. So screening her films as an easy access point and getting some more knowledge about her work, which a lot of people didn't know, that she'd filmed a documentary about dictatorship in Argentina. And then friends and collaborators of my own generation that I've met through the years, from SAIC's MFA program to UIC's MFA program, and really just highlighting the initial phases of Cinta Previa. We're promoting solely women, Latinx makers, from Afro to Indigenous to, you know, to the Latinx in between. But it's obviously, as you've seen, grown to include both genders, all genders. And this is just another snippet from one of my favorite screenings, most important one to me probably, where I featured one of the films by Puerto Rican filmmaker, Brincando el Charco is the name of the film, which was one of the films that got me kind of interested in experimental, non-narrative, or just becoming a filmmaker in my own right. Some of the programming notes, attendance, featuring the work of and getting sponsorship by the VDB through that micro grant through Comfort Station to be able to feature the work of Coco Fusco, Afro-Cuban video artist and artist who is seminal to this kind of idea and project, and really keeping that pro-Black and Indigenous focus from the get-go, and not being something that's secondary or ancillary to the project, queer focused, women focused from the beginning, as you can see from the 5 or 7, I should say, initial programs that kickstarted the series. That's it for me. I try to just whiz through those. We're gonna get to some of the questions and things from the you know, the takeaways and the whole point of the conference, and of course be open to questions. But I want to segue from this idea of community and working with the hyper-local, the way that Cinta Previa was kind of born, to then allow for Natalia to present the work and publication and space that she's running, and also addressing the community in a different way, and of course in a different part of the state altogether. So Natalia, do you want to take it away? I'll stop.
Hello, I'm Natalia Linares. I am a Peruvian and French artist who has been living in Illinois for 10 years, and those 10 years were in Peoria, Illinois, where I arrived invited by who became my husband not too long after to work on a project together. So I'm going to share my screen right now to show you a bit of this project. Just a moment, please. Here. Okay. Excuse me. So the organization name is Yaku. We created, my husband and I, a nonprofit organization. We both co-founded. It's a 501c3 non-for-profit arts organization. It had to be very serious because we were really trying to restore an abandoned church. That's how it started. The whole project started. We wanted to, this is Peoria, where it's located in Illinois, and we wanted to restore this building to turn it into a cultural center, international cultural center, to invite artists to come from all over the world to Peoria. So the main projects we were working on to be able to bring some steam to our main purpose were snacks, which are small nomadic artistic experiences, and also a magazine, an international magazine named Ukai Zine. I don't know if you can see it well, but Ukai is Yaku, the word Yaku backwards. And Yaku in Quechua language from South America, spoken mainly in the Andes, means water. And the idea is that every person who participates is the water to make this project grow. So Yaku is the one who is part of this project with us. So we've created a few large installations that became very memorable moments for Peoria. And I'm going to talk first about the main one, which is a large installation we did on the church. So this is the church that we were trying to restore for several years. And we collected thousands of hearts all around the city, knocking on doors of businesses, asking business owners to let us ask Peorians, what do you love and hope for your city? How do you see its future, right? Just what do you love and hope was the main one. And it was a very large endeavor. It took several months to make it. We were so many. The community of creative-minded people that we are a part of is about 20 to 25 persons who participated in this project. So the idea is that all the love of Peoria was pouring out of the doors and overflowing, right? So we had it was very well received by the local press. It was a beautiful moment for us and I think for Peoria. And but after making a few feasibility studies, we have discovered, we now know that this project would be too costly for us to be able to develop and continue. We will not be able to restore the building. So now we are working on a new structure, and I'm gonna talk to you about that structure right now. This is one of the other, so we started our snacks, the small nomadic experiences, using empty storefronts. We would find empty storefronts and knock on the door of the business owner and say, hey, can we clean, repaint your walls and make an artwork here or an exhibition? For how long? One night, maybe only 5 hours. It would take us more time to prepare the room than to make, than to create the event. But it was very profitable for the business owners because they enjoyed the beautiful, fresh painted space that they were able right after each event to rent. But for us, it was a lot of work. So there are two artists who are the arts managers, Christine Yuri and Bethany Carlson. Both of them thought that it was a better idea for our snacks to be presented in a way that would be more simple in the future. So they said, let's rent a container and make exhibitions in the container wherever we want in our city. So we work with an incredible art director named John Seckler, who makes incredible flyers. So these are the three last events we did inside of the containers, each one per summer, 3 different summers. And we have, most of these artists come from out of town, but they have a relationship to Peoria. One did her studies in Peoria, another one is from Peoria, another was teaching photography at Bradley University, yes. So this is what it looks like when it's full. The container is just there, anyone can come, the doors are completely open and you can learn about what we do, and if you're interested in participating or coming for our next events. So this is a bit of the feel that you have when you go in. They really create a real exhibition space. It really looks like a beautiful gallery. They did an incredible job with the lighting. It was a very professional, it was incredible. Every time I had the pleasure to visit these exhibitions that we created together, I felt as if I was a guest of the organization, right? The most beautiful part of creating an organization is when it doesn't belong to you. It wasn't yours to begin with, and everyone who's a part of native of their own city or not give their best. And this is, to me, a massive best. Because it takes a long time to make these events happen. So I decided that it was important that we create something that was more immediate, because we have a large amount of artists from other countries who are very interested to work with us. And so I proposed to the team to create a magazine, and we created Ukaizin. We did a first volume in 2016. The day we launched the magazine, we sold out. We had no more magazines left. It was incredible. Every single person who came got one, and we celebrated together. And now, a few years later, it took a very long time to make the second one. So these magazines are an encounter. We have artists from other countries and cities and who want to come to Peoria, but we also have articles about Peoria. So the one who comes in has a feel of what the city looks like, or they're coming to visit, and the ones who are inside can be surprised by different approaches of art that come from other countries. So the volume number 1 was really a beautiful masterpiece. There was an incredible team to create this project, and everything was perfect, from the making, the process, the making, the artists, everyone was happy. We took this magazine all over to many different countries, in countries in Africa, in South America, in Europe. We even launched the magazine in Paris and also in Lima in Peru. And we also presented it in the Fine Art School of Kinshasa in Congo. So now that you see, this is now the project. We don't know when the next publication is going to happen. Now that I have the pleasure to spend time with John and Jose, I'm going to learn how to be able to find funds, maybe in the future, to be able to create publications, because at this time we're focusing on the online practice because it's faster for us. And what I can tell you is that we're very proud that this is the first made in Peoria trilingual art magazine. And when you go inside, you can see that it's in English, or you can see it in French, or you can see it in Spanish. I am the editor of the Spanish one, so I'm very happy with this project. And in the future, there is other projects for the language, and I will keep you updated about it. So Yaku now has, because we cannot restore the building, we decided to focus the project for it to take a different form. So we use this beautiful mini mansion located in Peoria, right across the street from our giant oak tree, the oldest tree of Peoria, where we make events. One of the main events we made a few years, last year, was participating in Terrain Biennial. And we presented the work of an artist from Chicago and one from France. And they got the first page of our PJ Star in Peoria, both of them, which was very exciting for us. And on the inside of the house, we've done installations, performances. It's a very big place, and we would hope in the future to have also residency program for artists to stay and exhibit inside later on. Done performances. They're usually very well attended because people care very much to discover new forms of life and art and culture, and also very large installations. And so this place now has, what we're looking for is to create relationships with already efforts, communities, people who are creating alternative ways to share art, and give them an opportunity to bring their efforts to Peoria. And we'll talk about it in just a moment about that. And I am done. I'm going to let John talk about his project, Chuquimarca.
Yeah, thank you, Natalia. That was great. I'm excited to see the future of the magazine, but I'll try not to rant for my portion. I usually go on like hours and hours of rant. If anybody who every time I talk about the project knows I'm always going far and beyond with what I'm sharing. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and I'm basically just gonna run through the context and my project, the Chuquimarca Project. My name's John, by the way. I go by he, him. So file view, enter full screen. Awesome. All right, yeah, so my name's John. Basically, I'm gonna just run through the origin story and the landscape of how Chuquimarca came about. I go by he, him. Yeah, let's get into it. So Chuquimarca, as of right now, the statement of what it is very open-ended. It's not a mission statement. It's basically kind of a focus of how to go, how to run a project like this. So basically, it reads Chuquimarca, sometimes Chuquimarca Projects, is a library project space focused on the native Mexican, Caribbean, and Central South American contemporary art and culture discourse in Chicago, purposely using territories as opposed to identity to talk about how us as within this Latinx diaspora are talking about, you know, like our histories within our own territories. I could get into that. Let me change this real quick. I'm sorry. It's in my way. There you go. And yeah, and before I go forward, I do want to acknowledge that we are, Chuquimarca specifically, does work and operate under the traditional homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ottawa, Ojibwe, and Paromi nations. I think it's always important to bring in the indigenous people of the land into conversations or as an acknowledgement in order to reach for just futures. So Chuquimarca officially launched in March 2019, but in the slide, what I'm gonna reveal to you that it was a very long process of understanding what a project like Chuquimarca is before that. And I currently run it. It's me and myself. It's not a nonprofit. It's just a project in itself. And those are my handles if you want to visit the website or the Instagrams. So a little bit more context about me. I think Chuquimarca and Cinta Previa, both being Chicago-based, are responding to, Jose Luis's project is responding to the arts landscape of Chicago specifically. Specifically for me, and my context as an individual, I grew up here in Chicago in the Northwest Side in and around Logan Square. And as you can see, this first photo is Logan Square, maybe a few years ago. And there's some graffitis there. In the bottom, you have Pilsen and Humboldt Park. So kind of rolling into these different neighborhoods where we would assume there's lots of Latinx art presence. Again, this is pre-gentrified Logan Square. So Logan Square was always Latino since the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, all until the gentrification started after 9/11, right? And this is important to bring up as a response of why Chuquimarca happened, because I, as someone who grew up in Logan Square, was in Logan Square, and we're talking about once I started first getting into the arts in 2013, 14, 15, like post the high school and when I was in community college, thinking about where could I go to learn, one, arts and culture, but two, where I could feel like I could participate in discussions and discourses that resonate with me as a Chicagoan and Latinx individual here in Chicago. Not surprisingly, all those discussions went to Humboldt Park and Pilsen with their own, like, the Puerto Rican Museum and the National Museum of Mexican Art, who have their own discourses also since the late, since the 80s, right? However, those are very culturally specific, and I'm not able to have the discourses that I wanted to within those museums or institutions. As one, they focus on Mexican, and the other one focus on Puerto Rican, right? So they're still kind of in this identity bubble. And if you haven't guessed it yet, I'm not Mexican or Puerto Rican. I'm Ecuadorian. So like these histories, these micro histories that I was kind of looking for in these art institutions were not there, even if they were culturally specific, saying that they were Latinx, right? With that, I started wondering about, like, okay, well, who's taking care of these other Latinx stories, right? We're talking about Ecuadorian migration here. We're talking about Peruvians. We're talking about Dominicans, et cetera, who were taking care of the arts and cultures of these histories, and who's presenting it, and who's working with communities in Chicago specifically, right? Again, this is in 2013, 2014, 15. This was like before, like, the LA Pacific Standard Time happened in Los Angeles, which happened, like, I think in 2017. And before, like, there's these push with the Google Arts initiatives that also kind of happened around that time, right? And I started asking, so then I started to go into the arts. I went to Columbia College and thought, okay, like, I could go in and see where I could help into the discourse here in Chicago specifically. And I went in with lots of questions, right? Question specific, like these questions that I put up, like, if I walked into a contemporary art gallery in Ecuador today, what will I see? Who are the Ecuadorian artists working in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s? Are there any Ecuadorian artists working in Chicago? What are they making? What do they care about? And of course, asking all these questions, no one really had the answer to here. And there's a revelation coming up that you'll understand that these questions do get answered. However, I would have to, like, travel far, far away. So with that, I started, like, learning about the art world, like, what is it, how, you know, what's it wrong, what's a nonprofit, and slowly but surely, I started gathering all my knowledge with just interning and reaching for the stars, right? So with that, I did ask the question, like, okay, if there was an exhibition space that said it's a Latinx art space, contemporary art space, and we're talking about contemporary artists working today here in Chicago who identify Latinx, what does that mean? And I'm going through rabbit holes and nuances, talking to so many people, that question does get answered. However, surveying the land is different than actually doing it. But in surveying it, the answer was no. And the traditional exhibition space, project space, just to talk about it, is not going to be enough to really grasp these micro histories, these different thought worlds of, like, what is Latinidad, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm like, okay, if exhibition space is enough, what should it be, right? So then I went to an art residency in No Lugar, Quito. It's called No Lugar Arte Contemporáneo in Quito, Ecuador, which is the capital of Ecuador. They're really cool folks. I invite everyone to just check them out and go to their residency. The residency is really, really amazing, and they really try to help you with whatever art practice you're trying to go for. And then Quito in itself is a cute city. It's, anybody who knows like Ecuador, usually they go there because it's like the tourist side, but it's a really nice residency. Anyways, as soon as I get to that residency, the first thing that I saw like entering the door is that they had like a library. Like they had a library of like all the art production conversation that was happening in Ecuador today, 10 years ago, 50 years ago. So there is this history, the history that I was trying to like look for when I was here in Chicago. We're like specifically trying to answer what was a Ecuadorian painter in the 30s? What did they care about? Like all those questions was answered immediately when I saw their library. So coming back over here, I'm like, okay, I think the project has to be a library project. But how do you run a library? Which is another talk, right? But going to the specifics, still asking all these questions, still like asking, okay, if bridging in here in Chicago specifically, how we were mentioning earlier, how it's a micro center. What does that mean? National, rural, local, and what does it mean to have National Museum of Mexican Art? Also with contemporary Mexican artists, like who is the serving, also with indigenous native discourses and the non-speaking Spanish Caribbean. So it became this big, these big questions, right? So, and then like, again, these were just like bigger questions of how to just the structure of like who'll be funding it, what does curation look like, which I still don't know to this day. But in all these conversations, there is a structure to the Chuquimarca project to exhibit. The structure is trying to 3 or 4 exhibitions a year. Because of the pandemic, we're rushing a little bit this year, obviously, because we couldn't do exhibitions, but a group proposal process for people who want to be in social cultural conversations, trying to give agency, holding each other in conversations, and trying to find plural perspectives within all of us as Latinx folks. And yeah, bridging the discourse of the Americas. And as an independent project, just trying to say like it's not a nonprofit, so I could be as real as possible and take it slow and prioritize and workshop as much as possible. But the future of Chuquimarca is grand. So I just have to, well, we just have to like just improve my library skills and train relationships for the library portion. And yeah, here are some of the pictures of the first year, which was in my apartment, and some of the exhibitions. And the bottom part, this one here with the one with the couch, that's the one that we're currently at, the space. So yeah, that's a little bit. I do want to invite you guys to the reading group that we have coming up every Tuesday at 6:30, okay? I'll give it back to Jose Luis to finish, well, to tie in our discourses. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank both of you. I was just taking lots of notes here, but I think we also do want to open it up for discussion and questions and try to get back to those takeaways and those primary questions we were talking about for the whole conference, or for the whole panel, I should say. How to best provide relief, healing, and a sense of place for Latinx artists, providing various pathways for visibility for artists. I think Natalia and I might, on the one side, as artists ourselves as well, maybe can speak to just how sometimes that glass ceiling feels very short and low, and you can't, and you think you can just kind of like break through it, but it's still like hard, or it's very, 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 very tall in other regards for institutions, and how we're kind of all just navigating these barriers from those very specific things that John mentioned, to the cultural kind of conflicts, to funding and space. There's so many issues that we kind of wanted to open up. The challenges of working with a rural community that I thought Natalia can attest to in a small city, maybe conservative cities, or you know, the politics around engaging our communities are complicated. The other kind of topic I think that we still want to address here are how we relate to being in the Midwest, right? What does it mean for us to be international, to engage with artists from various parts of the Western Hemisphere, all of the Americas, being inclusive of the entire 3 parts of what America means, not just the one country that it calls itself America, from the indigenous, the African, as John said, the non-Spanish speaking parts of the Caribbean and also all of the Americas, to the Spanish speaking, and of course our name or brand title kind of. There's also questions about our own sense of place, right, in these conversations, and the invisibility traps. So something that I know John wants to kind of address as a question, and hopefully you will all be interested in discussing further. But with that, I'll just say my little part, in the sense that as an artist, I created Cinta Previa because I wasn't seeing the representation. We weren't finding our places to put our work. So I just found a place to put all of the things that I was studying for my thesis work at UIC, the artists that I was researching historically to the contemporary, to showcase and share the connections that I saw between their works that hadn't really been written about or explored, and to make sure that other people know about these things. And then also, you know, eventually imagine that there's a platform for myself. This was pre the Panorama Latinx series at the Cisco, literally like the summer before they even launched their call and led their screening. So I was kind of ahead of the curve in some accidental way or necessary way. And then, you know, morphing to then be in Logan Square, which I'm also from and was raised in, and my family has been in for like 2 generations now. And seeing the gentrification and the ways that we're pushed out of these conversations and these spaces, it's very meaningful to be in Logan Square in conversation for the initiation, and now to be in the virtual is another thing. But John, Natalia, do you want to jump in, or should we start taking some questions? I'll look at the questions.
Yeah, I think because it's there is a time limit. I think we should go into the questions. I have one here with Libya, Bianibi. If I said that right, I'm sorry, Libya. But it says, hi, can someone speak to any efforts you've seen or made to also investigate the effects of colonization in Latinx-oriented artistic spaces? It feels like there's a constant equation of Latinx and indigeneity, which although related are not the same. I wonder if this happened because maybe there are many indigenous immigrant artists from Latin American backgrounds, or if it's a diet that hasn't gained traction yet. Who wants to answer? I could answer that, but at least if
I would like to answer a part of it, just a part of it, so I can explain our relationship, because I feel that it could be a form of solution or an option, right? Creating opportunities. And it starts with just a little of the origin of the project that exists in Yaku began because when moving to Peoria, seeing so many young people felt the need of living, we wanted to create an opportunity or a way for people to have a reason to stay or an interest of staying. So there is something that is important now that we're not restoring the church and with the building we have now, that we're trying to connect with efforts that are from different communities that surround us. We're going to start with Illinois, and I started knocking on the door of John just to discover his perspective of the Latinx community and his project, and offer the opportunity through our space for Chuquimarca to select one exhibition, an artist, a conversation, a panel of discussion that would be created there in this urban setting, and we could bring to the city of Peoria. So what we are trying to create in some way is to Pollinize, that's a great pollinization actually of art that you find in urban settings where you can listen to different forms of conversations that are not heard in cities that are away from the bigger city. That's how we got to be together, and this is what this center is trying, this space is gonna try to make, is to create a place for all those different voices, listening to the differences actually between the different forms of Latinx or indigeneity, right? To create a place where all these discussions can happen in 1 year, in 1 year, for example. So it's a system of distributing art towards the inside of the country, not only towards bigger cities. That's as answering the efforts that you've made. We're on our way.
And I think do you want to say something, John?
Oh, you go.
I was just going to kind of directly answer the part about the the issue of indigenous artists and kind of this Latinx nomenclature kind of also invisibilizing and erasing indigeneity. Like it comes from a legacy of these indigenisms in our home countries that have kind of set a pathway of imagining of a false mixing and a lie of mestizaje, whereby we become more indigenous by infusion, and the indigenous person just kind of disappears as the goal of the white supremacist kind of systems. So to address that further, I mean, that's partially part of I think the reason John created the project with that as its initiation. I won't assume, but also for me, to programmingly. I don't think I had my language figured out, but I knew that from the initial phases, like there's literally one of the screenings that's just dedicated to Two-Spirit, indigenous, lesbian, woman, Chicana artists talking about indigeneity and allowing for that voice and work to come out. And that's balanced again with, from the beginning, having Afro-descendant Latinx people speak for themselves and talk about their experiences within this system that I just kind of described. So yeah, it's hard to, if indigeneity is already being erased from within our community, to imagine that someone is going to kind of like rise from out of that with the complexities and the issues and then suddenly solve that problem is kind of impossible.
Yeah, I don't know if Olivia, I think you could respond live back or not. I don't know if it says the question has been or was going to be answered, but
Yes.
yeah, this, or I don't know, are you, well, I'm not sure. Well, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so that question, I literally had that conversation with an artist the other day. I've been having that conversation with as many people. This is why Chuquimarca is to answer that question in depth and in slow with these panel discussions. Again, an issue when I first started like asking these questions, like these panel discussions weren't doing it. So I do want to encourage you to email me, and then we could set something up and we could get some more people involved in the conversation. Because I could really go into it and like go into it, but that is a conversation we've been having. I wanted to know more context of like exactly where you're coming from too. So I know we're running out of time, but definitely email me and then we could go into it. I don't know if we want to go into, we got some other questions here as well of, not trying to dismiss the question, maybe not at all, definitely just email me and we could go into it. But we do have like all these other questions that we should get to. There is a question of who would we like to be partnered up with in terms of organizations? Jose Luis or Natalia, if you wanna answer those.
The partnerships is what I am diving into now. That's what I am looking for, a very diverse form of approaches to the art that represents all forms of community living in the US, that can also exchange culturally with artists and people wanting to come here and discover what forms of life and culture exist here. So I am in search of partnering with mainly alternative efforts made by curators or artists to support their efforts, because I know the work is hard and I want them to have a place where they can feel welcome to let things go and enjoy being able to be heard a second time again, you know, to make their projects grow all over if possible.
I think partnerships wise too, I know John is already thinking regionally with the residency, the virtual residency that he created. And I'm also interested in the wider Midwest, in like small spaces in these rural communities. Like there's a wonderful organization that I've been housed by before in Lansing, Michigan, called Casa Rosado, which is literally a Puerto Rican diaspora woman's house in Lansing, who's lived and worked and father worked in factories in Lansing before, and Chicago as well, and knows the landscape and decided that to better serve her community, she would just open her house and create amazing programming, kind of similar to the models that John and I are kind of running on this. You know, just get some of your friends and go and just do something for ourselves. Those kind of collaborations, those intimate spaces, like working with with Natalia would be a dream for me to go down to Peoria one day when the pandemic allows or we've recovered. I think those kind of like lateral, just like community-based partnerships from one person to another person are our strategies, but I don't know if that makes the best sense or makes answers the question for a larger institution looking to better serve. It's really a lot of word of mouth. It's literally a lot of like people from down the street you just see and or you already know in the community, and you work within these networks and these micro
efforts
areas, right?
Awesome.
I wonder, what about the other questions here before? It's about 2:50, so I know we're going to end soon. I think we've answered
so the next
one.
question by Mr. Rodriguez. I hear a lot of honesty as to the shortcomings in the Chicago and Illinois artistic community due to cultural bias, which I really appreciate hearing, i.e. large focus on Puerto Rican and Mexican heritage. For early childhood educators and middle school educators, would you have any recommendations to author entitled children books which brings to light other cultures besides Puerto Rican and Mexican heritage? As the library, yes, I do have a few Peruvian children books that when I went to Peru, I bought a lot in there in Spanish and Quechua. So that's definitely as a focal point when I'm thinking about the library of what should be gathered in the space. That definitely children books with all these other heritage is something. I also have indigenous story myths and mythology for children too. Indigenous here, North American indigenous. So definitely, right, obviously, if I don't know if you're Chicago or not, if I don't have a recommendation list, but that's definitely something that Chuquimarca is trying to bring to the forefront.
And I just sent you my email as well for that question because I actually work at a Chicago Public Library. I'm not the children's librarian, I'm a teen librarian. So I work with adolescents and sometimes middle schoolers, but mostly pubescent teenagers and hormones and technology, lots of crazy stuff. But our Lucas and Corina are two children's librarians, so I can just pass you their email once you send me one, which I sent to you already. You can find out all of it's the back of the yards community, very Spanish speaking community, so they have all the answers to especially children's library questions.
I think we have
another question. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Since at least some of your work is international, have you thought of approaching the councils or org that bridge Chicago, Illinois, and other regions? For example, the Partners of Illinois has a partnership with Sao Paulo. They do culture exchange grants, just a thought.
I didn't know about that.
I didn't know either. I'm very excited about it.
Resource sharing. We're trying to share some resources. You're trying to share some resources. We'll take them.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's something that's very important that we were mentioning when we had conversations in preparation for today. In my case, I've been really looking forward to create a residency program, and I had for 10 years we've been working on this project. So it was like, okay, I will reach out to institutions so we can branch out with artists who are in South America and in Europe. And it felt like there isn't enough time in a lifetime when you have a practice, a full-time practice, a full-time job, to be able to create all those connections or to create opportunities for other artists. So that's why I feel as if knocking on doors of people who are creating the same, trying to create the same or responding to their surroundings, like both of you, I feel as if it's more rewarding because I understand the intensity, but at the same time is if you already have a residency program, let's bring it this way. So I am excited to find them, but I feel that in my case, I would like to send them your way so it can work with your projects. And then we would be in charge of the, I'm always making this gesture since I'm speaking because it's bringing it to the inside, taking, not away, but give it another opportunity than being presented only in urban settings.
Oh, and I'm glad you brought that up, Natalia, because that question about where the indigenous artists, indigenous Latinx artists might come from and emerge and become a star and kind of take over the scene and give rise to support in other artists. A lot of that also has to do, in my experience, having worked with student activist group in Champaign-Urbana, where I went to undergrad. I was a part of a group called Mecha, which is now no longer called Mecha. They have a new name, I don't know yet. They're in their self-definition phase, or trying to self-identify. Anyways, the group would work with, and we would work with, non-Spanish speaking people living in trailer parks in these rural communities as migrant workers working in the fields, the cornfields out in, you know, rural Illinois. The idea then that perhaps our indigenous brothers and sisters that are coming up from the, you know, the global South are not coming to the city particularly, or if they are, we are probably just not addressing or noticing them and mixing them into the milieu of Spanish speaking peoples. But the specific experience of knowing and living in a small town, even though Champaign-Urbana is quite large, and seeing and knowing that they're in these very, very, very tight communities, and they're maybe only there for a little while, as something that is perhaps part of the problem that we have to fix in terms of the immigration and the laws and the no justice for the migrant workers and the mass deportations that the country still sort of loves. You know, if they were able to stay and live here, and we would be able to better serve and work perhaps them and address them better.
Yeah, so then the last question, it's more of a comment, I think, or maybe it was turning into a question. It just says, okay, thank you, I was confused. By Carmen Perez. I am Puerto Rican, born in Chicago. I'm also a Latino artist looking to network, CarmenPerez.com. So I can now call myself Latinx. Thank you to all for the Zoom meeting. I think if you want to have the deconstruction of the Latinx word, we could have that. I think that definitely requires a session on their own. But again, feel free to email either of us if you wanted to go more into that of how we use Latinx in our own projects and practices.
Or don't, or resist it, right? Because that's valid and necessary too, to not assume that we have to all be one name and one identity. There's nuanced conversations and levels and layers of when it's necessary and when it's also just doesn't make sense. So it's better to be specific as we can be, right?
Context. I think we are about done with the questions, right? I don't see any more. If we were to go on for like another hour, we could go into it, you guys. But definitely for me, definitely reach out. I put my the email address of the Chuquimarca project in the chat, so feel free to reach out. This is why Chuquimarca was existed, to have all the questions as regarding Latinx, the Latinx contemporary discourse to happen. So thank you guys for coming.
Thank you very much.
I don't know if we're 3 minutes early or we're 5 minutes over time.
Right.
Oh no, we can go. No, I've got news that we can go 5 minutes over time if we like. So let's keep going.
I wanted to tell you something. I wanted to bring up what we discussed about all together, the three of us together. About I was mentioning both of you about the introduction of this ancient, the most ancient civilization of North and South America. The name is Caral, and it's located in the north of Lima in Peru. And it has been discovered to be one of the oldest civilizations who was created peacefully, with no signs of warfare, with no signs of blood, poured blood everywhere to create. So the way that this civilization was discovered by the archaeologist Ruth Shadi, she's a Peruvian archaeologist, and one of the most powerful things that come from all the things I've been learning of her teachings at this time, that I'm following very closely, is that this civilization was able to survive because they were working collectively, far away from other cities, far away from, they were able to work with the Andes, the rainforest, the oceans all together, because they were able to work in a collective manner to be able to survive. So I feel as if, not on purpose, because that wasn't how I reasoned this, that wasn't the reason why this project was created, but it's fantastic how it meets and how it's the idea of working collectively or creating opportunities or using the same, in some way, movement or flow and between us would I'm going to use this word, give more strength, give more strength to a Latinx voice, because they would have more opportunities to knock on doors too. So I am very, my door is very open to create more connections and more opportunities with artist-run spaces and curators-run spaces too, with or without the nonprofit, with the nonprofit title, because we are eager to be able to diversify our approaches to the arts in Peoria.
Go ahead.
We did get one last question. Is Latinx used in the US only?
It's becoming more popular in in Peru. We could hear it, but it was very rare. I just
I know some artists here in Chicago don't use Latinx anyways, and they're from the South, the global South, right? So again, it's to each his own who understands that term. Just another identity marker if you do identify that. But I heavily do see it that the formation of Latinx was formed through scholarship in the US. So that's definitely a tie in there.
And just to kind of clarify too, it's a gender inclusive term to mean Latino or Latina, and the genders in between or not in between, expanding further than just the two genders, that in the sense that there was a predecessor in the conversation about just lumping this whole communities or various communities of Latin American, Caribbean, Central American, indigenous, Afro descendants, and Spanish and mestizo and non and everything in between, to have a name for this diaspora in the US. And that was from the 70s and 80s conversation imposed on the community with Hispanic as a term, meaning Spanish speaking, but that still doesn't address the Portuguese of us, the speaking of us, the Afro-descendant languages and dialects, and the indigenous languages. So Hispanic is insufficient and a sort of government term. Then Latino came around as the new politicized kind of identity. There's also subcategories within that are like Chicano for the Southwest or for Mexican specific, terms of identification. And now the evolution of eventually the Latinx as a new term that John said is a little bit more academic and also gender inclusive and neutral, but up still to debate. It's already 3:02. No one is like shutting us down.
Right? So yeah, me has been doing because we're in the art, the Zoom art world now. So it's like we've seen it usually at the time, the hours the people just start leaving and whoever wants to engage. But I don't know how you guys feel. Or I don't know what the Arts Alliance. I don't know if the Arts Alliance wants us to.
I think there's a survey that's going to be thrown out, and that was going to be given to the panel, the participants. But I don't know if that's happened already or you see that. Yeah, we might have run out of steam.
Well, I don't know if the audience still wants us to answer more questions, maybe. I think the Arts Alliance says that they're not stopping us, so.
Hey, I'm gonna pop in here. Hi, y'all.
Hi.
So look, I'm not gonna shut you down if you've got more to say, but we do have an unconference session on Friday, and I don't know if y'all are available 3:15 to 5, but we're gonna have some open breakout rooms. And if that would be something that folks are interested in to have a more casual conversation, it did feel like there was a need to have a little bit more back and forth and really get into some of the details of this. We can definitely have a breakout room that's just a continuation of this session where y'all can keep speaking on this and do it in a much more kind of casual gather around the table style, if you're interested and available this Friday.
3:15, right?
3:15, yeah.
Thank you so much. I have 2 more hours than everyone, so it's 5:15 for me.
Yeah, I'll be down if anyone who came has more follow-up questions, just to share space and knowledge. So
yeah, I think I'm at the library. I think I'm working at the library at that exact moment, but I always can sneak into Zoom calls because that's our life now.
Isn't that just so strange?
Yes.
I'm working. I'm on a Zoom call.
Yeah.
All right, well, great. Then Natalia, we'll plan for you and John to definitely join us. And so folks who want to continue having this conversation and be a part of this conversation, come to the unconference on Friday and we'll keep it going. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank
you
you.
very much.
Really
Thank
appreciate
you to
it.
everyone.
Thank you. Have a beautiful day.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.